But yeah, you're absolutely right, David.
This reminds me of a section, and it's always the test that I put on for conservative, especially conservative populist sort of propaganda. This is from essay England, Your England by George Orwell that David and I talked about in a Patreon episode. But the quote goes this: "The British ruling class were not altogether wrong in thinking that fascism was on their side. It is a fact that any rich man, unless he is a Jew, has less to fear from fascism than from either communism or democratic socialism. One not ever to forget this, for nearly the whole of German and Italian propaganda is designed to cover it up." And like, that's the thing, is like, you can talk about BlackRock when it's getting in the way of like home ownership for people, but when it comes to actually their bankrolling, strike busting, like, you got nothing to say, because like, we know who's funding PragerU, for instance.
Oh yeah, of course. And I mean it's not even like, this isn't even a like quote unquote liberal union or anything. I mean, if you were talking about the machinists union, maybe you could say, oh, the machinists endorsed Joe Biden, blah, 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 whatever. But they didn't. The UMWA did not endorse Joe Biden. They pretty rarely endorse, actually. And I mean, this is, they try to stay, because, I think some people, they understand that, Republicans want to kill them, and Democrats aren't super favorable to them because they're coal miners. And so, a lot of times they kind of stay out of the electoral type stuff. So, you can't even say that like you could about even a lot of other blue collar unions that, oh, they donate to this or that Democrat politics. Like, it's just bootlicking for like, there's no other explanation that I can see about it. One person told me that they just don't find it interesting. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't find it interesting? You talk about like much less interesting crap all the time. And
Dr. Seuss.
Like, yeah, sure. It's not interesting. Yeah, okay.
I'm curious, David, did you have any comment on the economic underpinnings of this? Like, why don't they give a F?
Like the ruling, like the conservative movement?
Well, that they're blowing $400 million because of this, right? Like.
Well, I think money's cheap right now,
right,
man.
Okay, yeah.
So it's like the ability, especially now that it is so. And one, like, ownership is, from what I understand, is dispersed. Like, BlackRock owns like a 14% stake in WareMap, but it's like a few other.
And they're the largest investor.
Yeah, for sure.
And they only
small thing. But I'm saying is, like, there's a few financial corporate companies in New York who all own stakes in it, and money is really cheap right now. And if you can just sit on a mine for a bit of time, you might be losing some in the short term, but like your ability right now to just sort of borrow, and especially for an organization like BlackRock, they can wait it out almost as like an investment in the future, right?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it seems like that's what they're doing. I mean, you mentioned like 14% is not a lot when you're talking about, that's the maximum ownership that any single investment firm has. And so, as part of the effort to try to put some other pressure on them, they're doing this big, actually, international day of action tomorrow. They're going to have people protesting in front of BlackRock, in front of Fidelity in DC, in front of some investor in Australia. So, I mean, they're really trying to ramp up the campaign, but they are seeing absolutely zero love from Republicans. And frankly, they're not seeing enough love from Democrats here in the state. I mean, there's one Democrat that has, as of May, He's been pretty good. Chris England, he's the chair of the Democratic Party. He is also in the State House of Representatives. And he's been doing pretty good about being at the strike. He spoke at multiple events. He has helped fundraise. And the Democratic Party has actually used their email list, I think. They have. They've used their email list to send out for donations for the strike fund. So there's some good stuff. But like, Chris is the only elected Democrat that's really been out front and center on this. And like, I don't understand it, because this is 1,000 people that are, that they're willing to like forego a paycheck for this thing that they believe in. And, as entrenched as people's political beliefs are, they're not like immovable. And if you can convince 1,000 people in Brookwood, which is not a very large place, if you can convince 1,000 people in Brookwood that that you're on their side, I think that has ramifications in at least 2022, they're going to remember it in 12 months. They've already been on strike almost a year. They're going to remember this because in 2022, state House and state Senate races are up. And you've got those 1,000 people. You've got all their families. You've got all their friends. You've got, it would be a really big political winner, it seems to me, if the Democrats just went all in on this and basically mimicked everything that I'm saying about the Republicans, they say they care about coal miners, but look, they're leaving you high and dry. But here we are, Democrats, we're coming out and we're supporting you, doing every single thing that we can. We're trying to do this and we're trying to do that. And they're here and there, it's just not as much as it should be. This should be their issue for the next, until the strike is over. They basically should talk about nothing else because they can't do anything else. They're in the super minority. There's literally the only thing they can do is message. And so pick a good message.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's funny that just nationally, the conversation among Democrats is gosh, we need an issue. We need this issue. What's the issue going to be for 2020? And we have just a massive wave of strikes going on.
Right.
And neither party, like you say, Democrats are here and there to do just enough. And God bless the politicians that are doing enough. But again, it's no connection between the Monday or the Sunday talk shows and what does this mean for the Democrats in 2022, and just this massive issue going on right now. And it really is a testament to how much capital controls both parties, I think.
It's really flat because in none of the strikes that we're seeing are these people none of these unions skew crazy Democrat or left wing, right? We're talking about John Deere workers and Kellogg's plant workers, which maybe the Kellogg's plant workers are going to be more low-wage minority immigrant people, and so maybe there would be not a whole lot of gain to be had there. But a lot of these strikes are among pretty conservative constituencies, generally speaking, especially among the labor movement. And there's so much, it seems to me, to be won electorally. And they're just leaving it on the table. They're totally leaving it on the table. And really, especially, there's absolutely no excuse for the state level Democrats in Alabama to not be making this their issue, because what are they doing? They fought for 2 days about redistricting, which was bad, and the ACLU is suing the state for it because the districts are so gerrymandered. But they're not going to win. They're not going to win. These gerrymandered seats are going to go through, and so what are you going to do for the next 12 months? Before you're elected, you don't have anything else to do. The Republicans they don't need you for anything. The Republicans do not need the Democrats in the state for a single solitary damn thing. And so they're just sitting on their ass. I don't even know what they do all day, to be honest. All these people and politicians and communications directors, all these people that are getting a salary somehow to supposedly be fighting for working people in Alabama. I have no idea what they do all day. Honestly.
I'll tell you, they do the same thing they're doing across the South, which is reading, reports about how demographics are destiny, all while they're bleeding votes and supports among working people of all races. It's wild, and it's extremely frustrating. I want to play a minute of this clip. This is because I love. I hope the pressure works. It's frustrating, as you're saying, that there isn't not enough of a political home for it, in Alabama yet. But I do love the idea of taking these fights directly to, BlackRock, standing out front of their offices, if nothing else, just to make those people who go in every day 9 to 5 see the shit that they're doing to other people. Yep. Right. But I also think it's a very powerful image, and I think more and more people need to stop seeing capital as some kind of, immaterial spiritual force that resides elsewhere, and start to see it as things that exist in buildings, and there's people behind it, etc. Yeah. But anyways, you can pick any one of these clips here. But this is Brian Sanson, Secretary Treasurer of the UMWA, talking. This is captured by Kim Kelly, who, as we've noted before, is a must follow. Has been doing amazing work covering this.
They have ran them over. They attacked them in every way possible. And the state police, the county sheriffs, the governor, and BlackRock have sat around and watched this happen and not done a daggone thing about it. Well, we got a message for these hedge funds, mutual funds, and executives. Vanguard, BlackRock, Fidelity, L1 Capital, they're in Australia. We got a message for L1 Capital, too. We haven't forgot about you guys. We got some union miners in Australia coming to visit you all real soon. Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, $28 million last year. Yeah, that money come off the back of coal miners in Alabama. Yeah, good old Larry likes to tell folks, he cares about the world. He's a social democrat. He cares what's going on. Brothers and sisters, I submit to you, he's not a good Democrat, he's not a good Republican, and he's not a good human being for sitting around and watching what's going on down in Alabama. Got a state judge in Alabama that put this injunction on us, 350 yards from the picket line, that trying to break the union. Well, we're going to test his resolve, and we're going to test his interpretation of the United States Constitution, because we have a right to picket. We're going to picket these investors. We're going to picket these coal mines. And we're going to do it every day until we get a fair and just contract for the workers of Warrior Men.
Yeah. I mean, that's good shit.
I mean, it's good. It's like making all the connections. If nothing, I think this is a clear lesson, and the people involved certainly know this. I'm just saying for people watching, like, there's a very clear line, a clear moment where we're seeing that we don't have friends in high places. We only got each other, though, and it's a beautiful thought to think of, international solidarity there too, with folks in Australia showing up and protesting against these companies. And people should know, like, Australia, that company L1 or whatever, like, they own a lot of mines around the world, and they're heavily invested in these kind of industries, and they do this everywhere, right? And it's just like, I don't know, these fights are can feel very regional and local, but they're big and international and involve all of us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is the advantage that these big people have, because they're so dispersed. If you've got one guy that lives like down the road from you, and he's like real big and rich, and he owns whatever, and it's easy to and he owns 100% of whatever. It's easy to make him feel pressure. But if you've got one guy in this place, he owns 14% of the thing, and then this other guy, and it's not even one guy. BlackRock's not even one. It's like this team of like people that live off of like ripping profits out of communities. I mean, it's so dispersed, and it makes the targets difficult, and it makes it difficult to like even have these fights or conceptualize them, and it's a really big problem. And that's why as much as I hate that aspect of it, the political and electoral aspect of it, I loathe to talk about it, and I don't most of the time, but it is still important. One of the things that unions would say when they're trying to get their members to vote is that you can lose what you get in your contract at the ballot box. So these kinds of that's not the electoral stuff is certainly not my focus, and I really don't talk about it a lot. But it's important, and it has an impact on people's lives, and like the people that are involved in electoral politics, like, they need to recognize that, and especially the people that are elected or that are on staffs of like elected office of elected officials and stuff. Like I don't think there's enough recognition that like the inaction that politicians are taking in Alabama, and the affirmative action against them and the inaction for them is really having an effect on people's lives, and it's hurting people, and it's hurting communities. And like, I mean, they can't understand that. If they understood that, I don't see how they could do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put it well. I mean, there's so much we could get into, but I think we might have to table it for another time to do a deep dive into Alabama history and all that kind of stuff. We have a link for people to support the strike fund below.
I wanted to ask about that actually. Like, so, we've seen how fundraising has changed the electoral side of politics, and what's the sort of assessment of fundraising for a Warrior Met? We definitely want to promote this basically every week, and like we said, this offer we made last week still stands, that if you get a free retweet for David and I if you donate to one of these strikes. So but yeah, what's your sense of that? Has that changed? How vital is it?
I think it's important, but I think when you think about these strike funds and the amount that they're raising, and then you compare it to the numbers of people on strike, it really, to me, underscores the importance of planning on the part of the unions and long-term strategy, because the most that I've seen any strike fund receive is the ones for the coal miners in Alabama, and they've gotten $1 million from a bunch of different from small dollar donors. There was, I think, the UFCW donated $100,000. Of course, we raised about $75,000, and there are several other unions, and then there's some small dollar donors. And even if we say 1.5, even if we say $2 million, I don't think they're quite there, but let's say $2 million just for math. That's $2,000 per miner. That's not a lot, especially over the course of 8 months. And the union has been paying, the union estimates their weekly cost for the strike is like $2 million, because the union is paying for the health care. The union is giving them $400 a week, which is the largest strike benefit checks that any union gives their striking workers that I'm aware of. Which maybe it could be bigger, maybe not. There are certainly conversations to be had there, but you cannot sustain this kind of. That's why dues are important. You can't sustain this kind of thing on donations and charity from people. You have to. It has to be planned. It has to be organized, and that's why dues and strike funds are important. Because there are some unions that don't take enough advantage of it. Like the UAW has I think tens of millions of dollars in their strike fund, maybe even 100 million. Something. I mean, it's like an insane amount of money in their strike fund, and they're very loath to use it. And it's the money's there for something. Of course you want to save, but in times like these, you should be being okay, yeah, we're gonna fund half of the workers' salaries and screw you. In times like these, it seems like you should really be going balls to the wall. But whatever the strategy is, I'm not privy to those kind of conversations. But charity and strike funds and stuff like that from donations from outside folks, it can't make it. At best, you can you're going to be able to buy people dinner a couple times a week, right? So
no, I think it's important to realize the limitations of it too, while also finding if you're able to helping out. But it just sort of exposes, and I don't want to derail by talking about annoying people in particular, but it just sort of shows the kind of infrastructure and support networks and strategizing and organizing that is necessary to win these kind of battles with capital are immense. People who sort of throw around terms and concepts like general strike, I think sort of need to wrestle with the actual functional logistics, because unfortunately these things have a lot more to them than just willpower. If it was just willpower alone, I think Jacob would be able to pull them over the finish line. But we need to understand there's kind of unglamorous work that goes into being able to support ourselves as members of the working class in these prolonged fights with capital. And if you want to be on the big stage too, you have to start putting in the work now to be able to build those networks out.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that kind of stuff is so important, and you can't do it ad hoc, and you can't do it without long-term strategy. I saw like a tweet, about that general strike. Somebody was like, "Well, if everybody just gave $5, we could have a big general strike fund." I'm like, if everybody gave $5 and we did a general strike, everyone would get $5. Like, I minus the administration cost. Like, what do you? What do you mean? Like, how is this working exactly?
Pass Abe Lincoln to the person on your right.
It's called the velocity of money in economics.
So
right.
it's kind of. I mean. That's kind of the amount of thought that goes into these summits and things, and it shows the seriousness of stuff like having tens of millions of dollars in your strike fund. That took years and years and decades of people of thousands of tens of thousands of people giving $40 a month, $50 a month in dues, like 1% of their paycheck every month. It took years of that to be able to get to where, like, okay, we can go on strike and like not die of starvation. You can't manufacture that kind of thing out of whole cloth. It has to be like strategized and a long-term kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, Jacob, I really appreciate you joining us and giving us this insight. People should definitely be following the Valley Labor Report. Buy the hat. I get compliments on the hat all the time. I watch the show. Thank you so much, for joining us and for the work that you're doing there, like on the airwaves. I think it's really important to be able to reach people where they're at, and I'm very happy to be able to do things with you.
I appreciate it, y'all. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. And unfortunately, we are sold out of the hats right now.
I don't mean to cause trouble.
We're going to be, we've got some merch dropping soon that I'm really excited about. I don't know if y'all know Tabitha Arnold, but she's done something for us that's really, really cool that I'm excited to share with people. And, if you want to support us on the best way to do that is like, throwing us some money on PayPal or Patreon or something like that. We're going to be on 5 commercial stations come December, which is really, really cool. And we could definitely use the support. There's at least one person in the labor movement who's not super fond of us here in Alabama, and he's been trying to get unions to not sponsor the show anymore. So, any help would definitely be appreciated for sure.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.
Peace.